Viewed from the hole in the corrugated iron, the dust motes were whirling to and fro as a result of the wind outside. Amelia, all of 10 years old with limbs that stuck out at awkward angles, slumped on the rickety wooden chair, her stomach growling a monotonous dirge. It wasn't a new song, this gnawing emptiness. It had become the soundtrack of her life ever since Mama, her single parent, had succumbed to that nasty cough that wouldn't quit. Mama, with her booming laugh and endless supply of stories from the fancy houses she cleaned in the wealthy suburbs, was gone. Now, silence held dominion in their cramped shack, broken only by the occasional whimper that escaped from the thin blanket where her younger siblings. Aliyah and Gift, huddled, Amelia stared listlessly at the meager remnants of dinner, a watery concoction that could generously be called cabbage soup, stretched thin to feed 3. It wouldn't even fill a sparrow, let alone 3 growing children. The job hunt was a joke. Every shop she ventured into was met with the same glazed indifference. Any openings, she'd ask, her voice barely above a whisper. The answer was always the same, a bored shake of the head, a muttered sorry, love, nothing right now. Amelia knew the truth. Openings were as rare as sunshine in a downpour, and competition for those scraps was fierce. Desperation gnawed at her like a persistent rodent. Stealing was wrong. It felt dirty, leaving a bitter taste in her mouth. But the sight of Aliyah chewing on her own bony fist was 1,000 times worse. Stealing meant food, meant silence instead of the constant chorus of their grumbling bellies. The closer she came to a decision, the heavier the weight grew in her gut. It was a lose-lose situation, a tangled knot of need and guilt. The closest shop, a beacon of artificial light in the fading afternoon, was a few streets away. Amelia approached it with a practiced nonchalance, a mask of apathy she'd worn thin over the past few weeks. The air conditioning inside hit her like a slap, a stark contrast to the stifling heat outside. Rows of brightly colored packages mocked her from the shelves. Her gaze landed on a pack of instant noodles, the cartoon mascot winking a cheery promise of sustenance. Her heart hammered a frantic tattoo against her ribs. Taking a shaky breath, Amelia slipped the pack into the folds of her worn-out skirt. The weight of it felt like a stolen trophy, a constant reminder of the transgression. Reaching the counter, her palms slick with nervous sweat, she fumbled through her pockets, pulling out a few coins scavenged from a forgotten corner of the shack. Enough for a stale loaf of bread, a meager consolation prize. The setting sun painted long shadows as Amelia hurried home. Back in the shack, the noodles were a feast for famished eyes. Aliyah and Gift devoured their portions with a ravenous hunger that mirrored her own. A sliver of satisfaction flickered within her, they wouldn't go hungry tonight. But as darkness settled and the children drifted off to sleep, the guilt returned, a heavy cloak wrapped around her thin shoulders. Stealing might keep their bellies full for now, but it wouldn't solve anything. The truth was as clear as the moonlight filtering through the gaps in the roof. They needed a miracle, a way out of this endless cycle of hunger. The next morning, Amelia woke up with a renewed determination. The apathy that had become a shield was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She rummaged through Mama's old clothes, finding a faded scarf she tied around her head. It wouldn't erase the hunger lines etched on her face, but maybe, just maybe, it would make her look a little older, a little more capable. The walk to the wealthier suburbs felt longer than usual, her legs heavy with the weight of responsibility. She approached the first house, a sprawling mansion with manicured lawns and a gleaming white fence. Taking a deep breath, she rang the bell. The chime echoed through the polished oak door that creaked open to reveal a woman with a perfectly coiffed blonde bob and a face that could curdle milk. "Yes," the woman said, her tone clipped, eyes flitting over Amelia's threadbare clothes. Amelia swallowed the lump in her throat. "Excuse me," she began, her voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Amelia. I'm looking for work. Cleaning, anything. I'm strong for my age, and I learn fast." The woman's gaze softened a fraction. "You're awfully young, aren't you?" she said, a hint of curiosity replacing the initial disdain. Amelia held the woman's gaze, her own brown eyes reflecting a quiet desperation. "I am," she admitted, "but I need to take care of my younger siblings. My mama passed away recently, and there's no one else." The woman hesitated, a flicker of something akin to pity crossing her features. "We already have someone," she began, then stopped, noticing the faint tremor in Amelia's hand. "Look," she sighed, a hint of exasperation creeping back into her voice. "How about this? Come back tomorrow morning at 8. If Mrs. Peterson doesn't show up, you can have a go. But don't be late." A spark of hope ignited in Amelia's chest, fragile but persistent. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. "I won't be." The walk back home was lighter, her steps infused with a newfound purpose. Back in the shack, she shared the news with Alia and Gift, their eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and excitement. The meager breakfast of stale bread tasted better somehow, laced with the promise of a full belly and a future that wasn't shrouded in uncertainty. The next morning arrived with the crisp bite of dawn. Amelia woke up before the rooster crowed, nerves fluttering in her stomach like trapped birds. She donned Mama's old scarf again, a silent prayer for guidance on her lips. The walk to the mansion felt shorter this time, anticipation propelling her forward. Reaching the imposing front door, she took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. This time, an older woman with kind eyes and a dusting of flour on her apron answered. "Mrs. Peterson?" Amelia asked tentatively. "Oh, dearie, no," the woman chuckled, a warm sound that put Amelia at ease. "She's not coming today. Seems her grandson is down with the flu. But the mistress said you could have a go if you're willing." Relief washed over Amelia in a wave. "I am," she said, her voice firm. More than willing, the next few hours were a blur of activity. Amelia dusted, scrubbed, and vacuumed with a quiet diligence that surprised even herself. The grand house, with its plush carpets and gleaming furniture, felt like another world from the cramped shack she called home. But the thought of Alia and Gift, their faces etched with anticipation, spurred her on. By lunchtime, she was exhausted but exhilarated. The woman from the kitchen, Mrs. Daniels, took pity on her, offering her a plate of leftover stew and a warm smile. "You did good, child," she said, her voice laced with a gentle South African lilt. "You've got a good work ethic in you." Amelia finished cleaning just as the afternoon sun began its descent. The woman of the house, Mrs. Boter, handed her a crisp wad of bills. "You did a splendid job, Amelia," she said, her voice surprisingly warm. "Come back next week if you're interested." Amelia clutched the money, her heart overflowing with a mixture of pride and relief. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy groceries and maybe a new pair of shoes for Gift. The walk back home was a victory lap. The weight in her hand wasn't just money, it was hope, a fragile flame flickering against the harsh realities of their situation. As she entered the shack, the sight of Alia and Gift, their faces beaming with joy, ignited the flame into a steady fire. Amelia knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The low employment rate still loomed like a dark cloud, and the threat of hunger remained a constant companion. But for the first time in weeks, a flicker of defiance danced in her eyes. She wouldn't let apathy consume them. She would keep stealing, not food, but opportunities. Opportunities to build a future where hunger wouldn't be the soundtrack of their lives.